First Contact. The Obsidian Claw, Chapter 1. Captain Zechtel of the Krylox Empire stood on the bridge of his scout ship, mandibles twitching with anticipation. On the view screen before him lay their latest prize, a lush garden world ripe for conquest. More importantly, long-range scans had detected signs of a young spacefaring civilization, a primitive species that called themselves humans. Zechtel clicked his claws together gleefully. His superiors would be most pleased with this discovery. The Krylox were always eager for new slave races to exploit in territory to expand their empire. And if the initial scans were accurate, these humans would offer little resistance. "Commander, prepare a landing party," Zechtel ordered. "I want a closer look at this species before we calm the invasion fleet. Let's see what we're dealing with." As the scout ship descended through the clouds, the capital city of the human colony came into view. Zechtel studied the sprawling metropolis with a critical eye. Quaint structures of steel and glass, primitive wheeled transports scurrying about. It was almost charming in its backwardness, easy prey. The Krylox landing shuttles touched down on the outskirts, disgorging columns of heavily armed troopers. Zechtel marched at their head as they advanced on the city. Strange looks and cries of alarm greeted them as human citizens scattered before the alien invaders. A few braver souls tried to block their path, only to be swatted aside by armored Krylox claws. "Round up these creatures for interrogation and begin scouting the city's defenses," Zechtel snapped to his subordinates. "I want this planet secured within thee." A piercing whistle split the air, followed by a tremendous explosion. Zechtel was hurled to the ground as smoke and debris billowed around him. Dazed, he looked up to see a scene of chaos. Several of his soldiers lay unmoving, shredded by the blast. Others writhed on the ground, oozing indigo blood from shrapnel wounds. All around them, humans had taken up positions on rooftops and behind vehicles. They wielded crude but effective slug throwers and launched projectiles with startling accuracy. Krylox warriors fell by the dozens, their armor punctured by armor-piercing rounds. Zechtel struggled to his feet with a hiss of rage and disbelief. How could the primitives be inflicting such casualties? He screamed orders to regroup and return fire, but the humans gave them no quarter. They'd fought with a desperate ferocity, as if the very survival of their species depended on it. As the Krylox advance broke apart in bloody disarray, anti-tank rockets streaked in from human positions, turning the Krylox's own landing craft into blazing funeral pyres. Zechtel finally ordered a full retreat, his arrogance turned to ashes in his mouth. Nothing in their intelligence had suggested the humans would be capable of such resistance. The ragged survivors fell back to their orbiting scout ship, leaving scores of dead behind. Zechtel's ship limped away from the planet to the imagined sound of mocking human laughter. In that moment, a chilling realization gripped Zechtel. The human victory was no mere fluke, it was a grim portent of what was to come. When the invasion fleet arrived, expecting to cull a flock of helpless sheep, they would instead find themselves locked in battle with a species of wolves. The abyss of space swallowed Zechtel's ship as it fled the system, and in its wake, the embers of war ignited, heralding a clash of civilizations that would shake the very stars. The wrath of humanity, a long-slumbering beast, was about to be unleashed upon an unsuspecting galaxy. Unleashing the Beast. The Obsidian Claw, Chapter 2. News of the failed scouting mission spread like wildfire through the Krylox Empire. Disbelief and outrage consumed the imperial court. An upstart primitive race daring to defy the might of the Krylox? It was unthinkable, an insult that demanded swift retribution. The Emperor himself, Zorgax the Unyielding, decreed that the full force of the Empire would be brought to bear against the humans. The invasion fleet was assembled, a vast armada of warships bristling with planet-cracking weaponry, and legions of battle-hardened warriors. On the human worlds, a different kind of fervor took hold. The story of the successful defense against the alien incursion became a rallying cry, a symbol of human resilience and unity in the face of an existential threat. Old rivalries and conflicts were cast aside as the disparate human factions banded together to face the oncoming storm. General Allurivance, hero of the colony defense and newly appointed Supreme Commander of the United Earth Forces, found herself at the center of a whirlwind of desperate preparation. She oversaw the marshaling of Earth's combined military might, a hodgepodge of ships and weapons hastily retrofitted for the rigors of space combat. As the Krylox armada bore down on human space, Vance led her fleet to meet them head-on. The first clash was titanic, the void lit by the hellish fires of exchanged ordnance. Krylock's plasma beams scythed through human formations, vaporizing ships by the score. But the humans fought back with a savage tenacity, their cobbled-together warships proving surprisingly resilient and their tactics audacious and unpredictable. Vance directed the battle from the bridge of her flagship, the UES Indomitable. She was everywhere at once, rallying her forces, adapting strategies on the fly, leading daring counterattacks deep into the heart of the Krylock's fleet. Her indomitable will and tactical genius quickly became the stuff of legend among the human ranks. Despite Vance's brilliance and the valor of her crews, the sheer weight of Krylock's numbers began to tell. The human fleet was driven back, bloodied but unbowed, fighting a desperate rearguard action as the aliens pressed inexorably toward the core worlds. In the halls of power back on Earth, grim-faced leaders contemplated the unthinkable. Evacuation plans were drawn up even as the populace demanded no surrender. There was even whispered talk of a final, doomsday option, a network of hidden antimatter bombs that could score the worlds clean of life if the Krylocks could not be stopped. As the Krylocks massed for the final assault on Earth itself, Vance played her last desperate gambit. Marshalling the tattered remnants of her forces, she launched a series of hit-and-run attacks, drawing the bulk of the Krylocks' fleet away from their advance on the human homeworld. In a daring raid, a crack team of human commandos infiltrated the Krylocks' flagship, the Obsidian Claw. In a vicious close-quarters battle, they fought their way onto the bridge. Zorgax the Unyielding found himself face-to-face with Vance's second-in-command, Colonel Harkin-Reese. The two warriors squared off in single combat, Zorgax's monomolecular claws against Reese's power-assisted combat exoskeleton. Though Reese fought with skill and bravery, Zorgax's centuries of combat experience proved decisive. With a final, terrible blow, the Emperor struck Reese down, his broken body hurled across the smoke-filled chamber to land in a crumpled heap. As Zorgax raised his bloody claws in triumph, Reese, with his dying breath, activated the nuclear self-destruct charges the commandos had planted deep in the bowels of the ship. The Obsidian Claw vanished in a sun-bright flash of atomic fire. Zorgax and his senior command staff immolated in an instant. Cheers rang out across the human fleet as the Krylocks reeled in confusion at the loss of their leader. But even as the news spread, fresh waves of Krylock ships arrived, drowning the human celebrations in a deluge of fire. Vance, her eyes hard as flint, gave the order to fall back to the inner system. The war was far from over, and humanity would need every iota of its wrath and cunning to survive the trials ahead. In the face of annihilation, there could be no surrender, no retreat. Only defiance, writ in the flames of burning ships and the blood of heroes. The Obsidian Claw. In the wake of the devastating loss of Emperor Zorgax and his flagship, the Krylocks' assault faltered. The sudden power vacuum at the top of their command structure left the invading forces in disarray, their coordination and morale shaken. General Vance wasted no time in seizing the initiative. Even as her fleet licked its wounds and regrouped around the inner planets, she directed a flurry of strikes against key Krylock supply lines and staging areas. Hit-and-fade attacks by nimble human frigates wreaked havoc on the alien logistical network, steadily eroding their ability to sustain the offensive. Back on Earth, the scientific and industrial might of a united humanity kicked into overdrive. Weapons research progressed at a breakneck pace, yielding a host of innovative technologies to even the odds against the technologically superior Krylocks. The first breakthrough was in the field of directed energy weapons. Human scientists, building on captured Krylocks tech and their own ingenuity, developed a new generation of high-intensity laser and particle beam cannons. These weapons, while not as powerful as their Krylocks counterparts, were far more compact and energy efficient, allowing human ships to mount them in greater numbers. Next came advances in ship-mounted railguns, electromagnetic accelerators capable of hurling projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. Coupled with newly developed armor-piercing rounds, these weapons proved devastatingly effective against Krylock ships, their kinetic impacts bypassing shields and ripping through hulls with ease. Perhaps the most significant development, however, was in the realm of defensive technology. Human researchers, in a stroke of brilliance, created a new type of ablative armor composed of advanced metamaterials. This armor, when struck by enemy fire, would vaporize in a controlled manner, the resulting plasma cloud dispersing and deflecting the incoming energy. Equipped with these new technologies, the human fleet underwent a dramatic transformation. Shattered battle groups were reformed, their ships hastily retrofitted and upgraded. Or once they had fought with desperate courage against a superior foe, they now sallied forth with renewed confidence and firepower. General Vance, seizing the moment, launched a series of bold counteroffensives. Human strike fleets, their movements masked by newly developed stealth systems, hit the Krylox forces with a series of rapid, devastating attacks. Key Krylox staging areas were reduced to rubble, their supply convoys ambushed and destroyed. The most audacious strike targeted a major Krylox shipyard complex and a neighboring star system. In a daring raid, a human assault force led by Captain Ilara Voss infiltrated the facility, planting a network of demolition charges throughout its structure. The resulting explosion was visible light years away. The shipyard and the dozens of half-completed Krylox warships were then reduced to a cloud of expanding debris. As news of these victories spread, the tide of the war began to turn. Krylox forces, their numbers thinned and their resolve shaken, fell back before the resurgent human advance. One by one, occupied human worlds were liberated, their populations greeting their saviors with tears of joy and cries of vengeance. For the Krylox, the unthinkable had become reality. The primitives they had sought to conquer were not only resisting but winning. Each setback fueled their rage and their determination to crush the impudent humans once and for all. In the imperial capital, a new emperor was crowned, Valgax the Implacable, a scion of Zorgax sworn to avenge his predecessor's death. As Valgax rallied his forces for a final, all-out assault on the human core worlds, General Vance and her allies steeled themselves for the climactic battle to come. The war had taken a toll, in lives lost and worlds scared, but it had also forged humanity into something new, a force to be reckoned with on the galactic stage. No longer the divided, squabbling factions of old, they were now a united people, tempered in the crucible of war, and imbued with an indomitable will to survive. Whatever the cost, whatever the sacrifice, they would meet the Krylox's wrath with a fury of their own. The very stars would tremble before the clash of these two Goliaths, locked in a struggle that would echo through the ages. In the depths of Krylox space, a vast armada gathered. Emperor Valgax, his heart cold with the need for vengeance, had summoned every ship, every warrior to his banner. This was to be the final blow, a sledgehammer strike to shatter the human resistance once and for all. But even as the Krylox marshaled their might, the humans were on the move. General Vance, in a daring gambit, had launched an all-out assault on the Krylox homeworld itself. It was a risk born of desperation and audacity in equal measure. If they could decapitate the Krylox leadership and shatter their resolve, victory might yet be within reach. The human fleet, sleek and deadly with its new upgrades, slipped past the Krylox outer defenses with surprising ease. Vance, leading from the front as always, suspected a trap but pressed on regardless. The prize was too great, the stakes too high to turn back now. As they entered the Krylox home system, the scale of the enemy defenses became apparent. Vast minefields and automated gun platforms surrounded the approaches, while squadrons of elite Krylox fighters swarmed to meet the invaders. The battle that ensued was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships, their hulls shimmering with the distinctive blue glow of their new ablative armor, plunged headlong into the teeth of the Krylox defenses. Railguns hammered at enemy shields while laser cannons and particle beams slashed through the void, leaving trails of superheated gas in their wake. The Krylox fought back with the ferocity of cornered predators. Their ships, though fewer in number, were individually more powerful, their weapons powered by the dark energies harvested from captured stars. Plasma torpedoes and graviton beams tore at the human formations, each hit claiming a toll in shattered hulls and vented atmosphere. At the center of the maelstrom, the Indomitable dueled with the Krylox command ship, the Void Reaper. Vance and Valgax, the two master strategists, pitted their wits and their weapons against each other in a deadly dance of thrust and counterthrust. On the planet below, human drop pods rained from the sky, disgorging elite marine units into the heart of the Krylox capital. Urban combat, brutal and unforgiving, erupted across the sprawling cityscape. Human soldiers, equipped with powered exoskeletons and wielding advanced plasma weapons, clashed with Krylox warrior castes in a vicious close-quarters brawl. Leading the ground assault was Sergeant Thaddeus Riker, a grizzled veteran of 100 battles. Riker and his platoon fought their way into the Imperial Palace, a labyrinth of fortified corridors and deadly traps. Krylox Praetorians, the Emperor's personal guard, met them at every turn, their monomolecular blades and disruptor shields proving a formidable match for the human weaponry. In orbit, the battle reached a crescendo. The Indomitable, its armor battered and its weapons depleted, launched a final desperate salvo at the Void Reaper. The Krylox ship, its shields collapsed under the onslaught, erupted in a brilliant flash of escaping energy. But even as it died, it unleashed a final volley of plasma torpedoes, the searing bolts of energy ripping into the Indomitable's flank. On the bridge, warning sirens blared and consoles erupted in showers of sparks. Vance, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead, barked orders to her crew as they fought to keep the stricken ship together. In the palace below, Riker and his Marines, battered and bloodied, finally breached the inner sanctum. There, on a throne of obsidian and bone, sat Emperor Valgax, his eyes alight with malevolent fury. The final confrontation was short and brutal. Riker, his armor shattered and his weapons spent, engaged Valgax in hand-to-hand combat. It was a battle of titans, the savage strength of the Krylox pitted against the unyielding will of humanity. In the end, it was Riker who emerged victorious, driving his combat knife deep into Valgax's chest. As the Emperor fell, his lifeblood pooling on the cold stone floor, a great cry went up from the human forces. Against all odds, against the might of an empire that had subjugated countless worlds, they had triumphed. The Krylox, their leadership decapitated and their spirit broken, laid down their arms in surrender. In the skies above, the Indomitable, its engines failing and its hull breached in a dozen places, made its final landing on the scarred surface of the Krylox homeworld. As Vance emerged from the battered ship, Riker and his Marines raised their weapons in salute. The war was over. Humanity, bloodied but unbowed, had proven itself a force to be reckoned with. But even as they savored their hard-won victory, Vance and her comrades knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy, vast and mysterious, held countless other challenges and threats, and humanity, forged in the fires of war and tempered by the wrath of its enemies, would be ready to meet them head-on. Part 5. Victory and Vengeance. In the aftermath of the final battle, an eerie silence descended upon the Krylox homeworld. The great cities, once hives of industry and military might, lay in ruins, their towering spires toppled, and their streets choked with the debris of war. The surviving Krylox, their once proud bearing shattered, emerged from hiding to surrender en masse to the victorious human forces. For a species that had once considered itself the apex predator of the galaxy, it was a bitter pill to swallow. General Vance, her uniform still stained with the blood and grime of battle, accepted the formal capitulation of the Krylox leadership. In a ceremony heavy with the weight of history, the interim Krylox rulers signed the instruments of surrender, officially ending the war that had consumed the galaxy for so long. But even as the humans savored their triumph, the scars of the conflict remained. Countless worlds lay in ruin, their populations decimated and their ecosystems ravaged by the relentless march of war. The cost in lives, both human and Krylox, had been staggering, a toll that would be felt for generations to come. For Vance and her battle-hardened veterans, the struggle was far from over. The Krylox Empire, though defeated, still possessed a vast territory and resources that had to be secured and administered. The daunting task of rebuilding and maintaining order across the shattered remnants of the once mighty empire fell to the victorious human forces. As the human fleet took up positions across Krylox space, a new political order began to take shape. The United Earth government, once a loose coalition of bickering nation-states, found itself suddenly thrust into the role of a galactic superpower. Under the leadership of newly elected President Zora Singh, a former diplomat and war hero, humanity began to grapple with the challenges and responsibilities of its newfound status. For many, the victory over the Krylox was seen as a mandate, a call to take up the mantle of galactic leadership and forge a new era of peace and prosperity. But others, scared by the horrors of the war and hungry for vengeance, saw it as an opportunity to settle old scores and assert human dominance over the galaxy. Factions emerged within the human political landscape, each with its own vision for the future. Some advocated for a policy of reconciliation and integration with the defeated Krylox, seeing the potential for a new era of cooperation and shared prosperity. Others, led by the charismatic and hawkish Senator Elias Kane, called for a more aggressive stance, a continuation of the war by other means to ensure that humanity would never again face an existential threat. As the debate raged in the halls of power, Vance and her comrades found themselves on the front lines once more. Pockets of Krylox resistance, led by fanatical warlords and rogue elements of the old regime, sprang up across the shattered empire. The human forces, now serving as a de facto peacekeeping armada, were tasked with rooting out these insurgencies and maintaining stability. It was a dirty, thankless job, one that took a heavy toll on the already weary human warriors. But Vance and her soldiers persevered, driven by a sense of duty and a grim determination to see the mission through to the end. As the years passed, the human presence in the galaxy grew and evolved. New colonies were established on the ashes of former Krylox worlds, while trade routes and diplomatic ties were forged with other spacefaring species. Humanity, once a mere footnote in the annals of galactic history, had become a major player on the cosmic stage. But even as humanity basked in its newfound power and influence, the specter of war continued to haunt the galaxy. New threats emerged from the depths of unexplored space, while old rivalries and enmities threatened to plunge the fragile peace into chaos once more. For Vance and her fellow veterans, the struggle was never truly over. They had seen too much, sacrificed too much to ever truly know peace. But they took solace in the knowledge that they had played their part in shaping the destiny of their species, in ensuring that humanity would endure and thrive in the face of any challenge. As the indomitable, now a cherished museum ship and symbol of human resilience, rested in its place of honor above Earth, Vance could look upon it with a sense of pride and purpose. The wrath of humanity, once stirred to life by the threat of annihilation, had proven an unstoppable force indeed, and as long as there were those willing to stand and fight for the future, that force would never be extinguished. The end.